A lot of knickers have been in a twist this week. You may have seen the furore, manufactured as always, over the comments by the brilliant, acclaimed author Alice Walker, in which she did an interview with the New York Times and was asked what book she had on her shelf, and she mentioned one of mine, And the Truth Shall Set You Free. And, well, you can guess what happened next, because I am apparently notorious. Well, I'm honoured. I'm notorious, and therefore, how can this acclaimed author, activist, Alice Walker, recommend one of my books? And, of course, what's come out, as usual, is that Icke's anti-Semitic and racist, and is being recommended by this acclaimed author, Alice Walker, who has been writing and campaigning to expose racism, etc., all her life. And now she's recommending this book by this anti-Semite. And, of course, the people who are hurling this abuse at their core know exactly what they're doing, as I'll come to. But most of the others who just repeat it, usually on the left in politics, are just in the land of the bewildered this week. Because on one side, they've got this anti-racist, campaigning for justice and fairness activist and writer with a whole life history of seeking equality, recommending a book by this anti-Semite. And so they can't compute it. What's going on? The idea or the fact that actually I'm not racist, actually that probably one of the least racist people on earth with my philosophy on life, and I'm not anti-Semitic, would never occur to them, because if it did, they might be able to compute someone like Alice Walker recommending one of my books, because the two strands would come together. She is against racism, obviously, she was born into it, and so am I. So there is no contradiction. There's only a contradiction if you believe the propaganda against me, which is designed to do one thing and one thing alone, to discredit me and what I'm writing. And it's kind of so ironic that Alice Walker should be one of the people who has been targeted in relation to me, because she was born in 1944. She's a great writer, a famous, acclaimed writer, not least for the book The Colour Purple, came out in 1982, which won a Pulitzer Prize for fiction. And she's written many other books, and she's also a poet. I read recently a book of her poetry. It's a new book of her poetry. It's not long come out, and she very kindly gave me a copy. And it's absolutely brilliant, and I recommend it to anybody. So here is this, and the poetry is about justice, it's about fairness, it's about equality, it's about not judging people by their colour, but as Martin Luther King said, by the colour of their character. And how absolutely ironic that some of the things that have been said about her this week by these moronic repeaters. And the moronic repeaters are repeating what is said about me, and thus by implication connecting it to her, by these people, I call them ultra-Zionists, who are running a protection racket. That's what it is. And it's a protection racket in this sense. They claim that they are campaigning. These are all these groups like the Anti-Defamation League in America, the ADL, which is such a non-racist organization. It was caught working and supporting the apartheid regime in South Africa, the white apartheid regime in South Africa. I mean, hypocrites, it just doesn't cut it, really. And, you know, they talk about we're against hate. And what do? All these groups, they set out to get people to hate their targets. That's what they do. They're hate groups. And they are increasing the number of their targets by increasing and expanding the definition of anti-Semitism, which is itself a misnomer, because Semite relates to a group of languages in the Middle East. The overwhelming vast majority are Arabic languages. So the very name is a misnomer. But anyway, racism alone wouldn't be a good enough term. They have to have one of their own. Anti-Semitism. And on the face of it, what they claim is that they're trying to protect Jewish people from discrimination. Well, that's a load of rubbish from the start. It's not to do with that at all. I'll tell you what it's to do with in a second. But if it was about protecting Jewish people from discrimination, why do these groups like the ADL, and they're like around the world, the network is vast, it's extraordinary for a country of just 8 million people on a tiny piece of land. Why do they target Jewish people more viciously than anyone else, even when they criticize Israel or criticize the extremes of the political philosophy, not race, political philosophy called Zionism? Because it's far easier to label non-Jewish people anti-Semites than it is Jewish people. They still try. They call them self-haters and all this stuff. But it's more difficult. So they want to shut up Jewish people criticizing Israel and the extremes of Zionism more than anyone else. And the real reason that these groups exist and act as they do is it's a protection racket. It is protecting Israel and the extremes of Zionism, ultra-Zionism as I call it, from criticism and exposure. That's what it is. And it is an insult, an absolute stomach-turning insult to Jewish people who suffered in Nazi Germany for those groups today to exploit that, because that's what they're doing, to advance a political agenda today of silencing criticism of Israel. It's beyond my comprehension that anyone could even conceive doing that, let alone do it, and do it they are. So the protection racket means that you, A, constantly expand the number of definitions of anti-Semitism, which increases the number of people you can target and attempt to silence. And at the same time, your organizations keep coming out year after year and saying anti-Semitism's on the increase. Have you noticed it never goes down? And there's an organisation that makes its money, and a lot of money, by protecting Jewish people from perceived threats. It's a security company. And it's the company that comes out with the figures every year in Britain, saying anti-Semitism's on the rise. This is targeting Jewish people to get them to fear being under threat, more threat, as much as it is non-Jewish people, because they have to keep the Jewish people in fear, so they'll keep wanting more security and give their power away to the perceived self-appointed Jewish hierarchy, which doesn't have the best interests of Jewish people at heart at all. This is why we're now having introduced the pathetic Labour Party, just caved into this recently, the expansion of the definition of anti-Semitism, which is being accepted by governments and political parties and goodness knows what else, which doesn't have just the definition of anti-Semitism, misnomer as it is, being to hate or discriminate against Jewish people for being Jewish. That, for me, is the definition of racism against Jewish people, or anti-Semitism, as they call it, discrimination. No. This new definition is included with it are a list of examples, and the examples, the devil's in the detail and all that stuff, of what anti-Semitism is, includes, in effect, criticism of Israel and a series of things that you can't possibly say, otherwise you're anti-Semitic. And what they're doing is, first of all, expanding this definition to the point where pointing out that some Jewish people are involved in a global conspiracy, along with endless numbers who aren't Jewish, is by definition anti-Semitic. So if I'm talking about Henry Kissinger, who's wanted as a war criminal in many countries, and can't go into some out of fear of being arrested, who was involved in the grotesque, unbelievable mass murder of millions of people, not least in places like Laos, Cambodia. If I say that he's involved, then I'm an anti-Semite, even though it's true. You talk about George Soros manipulating countries through his Open Society foundations to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. And it's not, okay, well, let's see what the evidence is that Soros is doing that, which is enormous, by the way. No, it's anti-Semitic because he's Jewish. So this is a protection racket to stop legitimate criticism and exposure. And as I say, they're now expanding this. What they do is they talk about a, quote, anti-Semitic trope. And it started out that this trope, as they call it, was saying that there was a Jewish plot on the world, right? But they've expanded that now, because this is how they work. Now, anyone that says there's a global conspiracy at all, the evidence for which is just beyond overwhelming, is by definition anti-Semitic, even if they don't mention Jewish people being involved. It's a protection racket, not just to stop criticism of Israel, but to stop exposure of any manipulation. If you are a conspiracy theorist, of course, a term that was brought into widespread use by the CIA in the 60s to discredit people exposing the nonsense of the official story of the Kennedy assassination. Now, if you're a conspiracy theorist, you are, by definition, by implication, anti-Semitic. You're talking about conspiracies. Oh, you mean Jewish. It's like that, idiot, frankly. I think his name was Collier, who came to my talk in Watford on this recent UK tour. and actually came in and watched the talk, and then talked about me being poison in his so-called review, which was ludicrous, by the way, and incredibly misleading to anyone who read it and hadn't seen me speak. But then, immediately after he said I'm poison, he said David Icke doesn't actually stand up and basically abuse or shout or expose Jews in the talks. So where's your poison come from, darling? Oh, well, he was talking about the global conspiracy, so he meant Jews, really. It's unbelievable. It's shocking in its immaturity and in its the stunning levels of myopia that are necessary to see the world like that. But of course, people who don't question, just repeat, they don't go into any detail like, well, is he actually saying that? No. So instead, they just hurl abuse. And by definition, anyone who supports me, they must be anti-Semitic. So what we've had here is this story running this week about Alice Walker. And this is from The Guardian, which is a classic kind of anti-establishment pillar of the establishment in Britain. It's hilarious. Oh, The Guardian, that's radical, that is. It's left of centre. Goodness me, if only. Last thing it is. Anyway, Alice Walker under fire for praise of anti-Semitic David Icke book. See, they put anti-Semitic in quotes because if they didn't, then they'd open themselves to a libel action. So anyway, it says the New York Times also faced criticism for publishing the Color Purple author's recommendation without qualification. All right, so anyone who mentions me and recommends my book, they have to say, yeah, but he's an anti-Semite. This is the level we're going to. My philosophy on life is that we're all points of attention in the same infinite state of consciousness, having different experiences. So the experiences are transitory. I mean, incredibly transitory. Okay, you're a this, you're a that, you're this label, that label, all the labels we're given to self-identify with, all the labels we self-identify with ourselves. They are supposed to be who we are. And if we accept that that's who we are, the labels, then of course you've got a self-identity, individually and collectively, which can be played off against other labels of self-identity, races and religions and cultures and all these things, income brackets, to divide and rule the target population. You absolutely need to have this kind of, almost unlimited potential for divide and rule. You have to have people who see themselves in these pockets of self-identity, which I call the labels. You don't want them seeing that we're all points of attention in the same consciousness, having different experiences, transitory experiences. I mean, anyone bloody think that when our awareness, our state of awareness leaves the body, when the body cycle is over, that we go off to a synagogue or a mosque or a church or a temple in some other dimension? I mean, do me a favour. These are perceptual prisons and self-identity prisons of this smear of reality we call visible light. That's all they are. And I reject them. I reject them all. When I see people, I see points of attention in the same consciousness that I am, having a different experience. I don't see them by their colour and by their background and all this stuff. It's irrelevant to me. So then you look by contrast at these anti-racist groups. we're anti-racist, we are. Look at the heart on my sleeve. I'm ever so nice. When you look at them, they're obsessed with bloody race. They self-identify with it. They are consumed by it. When they see people, they do not see consciousness having different experiences. They see different races, different sexes, different labels. I don't. I reject them all. They're just experiences. So here you have people who are absolutely obsessed with race and at their core exploiting it to silence criticism of Israel, etc., who call me racist when I don't see race. I see consciousness having experiences. And this is the great irony. Now, because most people who buy this bloody idiocy don't do any research, they just repeat what other people tell them. They're in the land of the bewildered. Now, the people who are coming out and are really driving this thing this week about Alice Walker and me, they know what they're doing. They know they're just exploiting it for their own ends. But most of the others, the Twitter stormers and all these people, they're bloody clueless. They're just being dangled on the end of a string, thinking they're free thinking, if only again. And they've been ever so bewildered, because here is this amazing woman, this great author and activist, Alice Walker, who spent her life campaigning against racism and for equality and justice and fairness, recommending a book by this anti-Semitic racist. It would never occur to them when they're trying to square a circle that on that perceptual basis cannot be squared. They would never think, well, hold on a minute. Maybe what they're saying about this bloke Icke is not true. Maybe he doesn't see race. Maybe he wants racial equality and sexual equality and all equality for everybody, and that means everybody, not reverse racism, which is what we're getting. And maybe he wants fairness and justice for everybody, and maybe that's why him and Alice Walker get on so well. No, that process would never enter their minds, because they're just repeaters, software programs with someone else pressing enter. They don't have to be. They can change that whenever they choose, but they clearly choose not to currently. So let's have a look at this article of The Guardian. Asked what books were currently on her nightstand, Walker, the author of The Colour Purple, mentioned, among others, And the Truth Shall Set You Free, by the controversial, well, crikey, if you're not controversial in this world of lunacy, then you need to look in the mirror. By the controversial British figure, my figure now, David Icke. Icke, an author and public speaker in his own right, has long propounded a series of conspiracy theories in his work that many see as anti-Semitic. No, many don't see them as anti-Semitic. The people that grab the microphones, representatives of the protection racket, and those bewildered people repeating the mantras of the protection racket, see them as anti-Semitic. The book is unhinged, anti-Semitic conspiracy tract written by one of Britain's most notorious anti-Semites, wrote Tablets magazine's Yair Rosenberg. Among the most strident critics of Walker's comment, Rosenberg also faulted the Times for failing to react to or qualify the contents of the book to its readers. Icke has long claimed that a shadowy cabal controls the world, a familiar anti-Semitic trope. Here we bloody go. Oh, he's saying that there's a network manipulating global events in the direction of the world. He must be anti-Semitic, because that's an anti-Semitic trope. See what they've done. This is what these ultra-Zionist extremists have done, and their hate groups. They have, first of all, connected this global conspiracy suggestion to Jewish people. And they've done it on purpose. They want it. They want it to be blamed on Jewish people. And that's where a lot of people that investigate the conspiracy, that actually does exist, by the way, that they link it to Jewish people, which is a big mistake. Are some Jewish people involved? Yes. Are the ultra-Zionists involved? Yes. Along with loads of people who aren't Jewish, and etc. But they want people to say it's a Jewish plot, because then they got them. Because then they can say, yeah, it's anti-Semitic. And then what you do is you expand it so that anyone that says there's a global conspiracy is by definition then anti-Semitic and racist, because it's a familiar anti-Semitic trope. It's just a whole psychological game. And it's so blatant when you see it. So I'm not saying it's a Jewish plot. I mean, you know, the idea that every Jewish person is involved in this whole global conspiracy is absolutely ludicrous. But they want that perception because it suits them, because then they can use it to silence genuine factual research into the fact that a cabal does control the direction of the world. The fact that there is a 1% alone, as it's called, where a handful of people now own the wealth, the same wealth as the poorest half of the global population, obviously that's not happened by accident. And I mean, you just look at my books, you'll see fact after fact after fact after fact on every bloody page exposing this. Now, they don't want that, and they certainly don't want to debate it. So don't just call you anti-Semitic. So the Twitter stormers came out, of course, and this guy Rosenberg of the Anti-Defamation League, which was exposed for working with the white apartheid regime in South Africa, the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, campaigns against hate, when all they seek to do, like all these other hate groups, is to get the population to hate their targets. And of course the targets increase all the time as the definition of anti-Semitism increases all the time. So this is this bloke Rosenberg again, and like many conspiracy theorists, Icke claims that this secret conspiracy happens to be Jewish. No, I don't. No, I don't. I'm saying some Jewish people are involved, and lots of people are not. So that's a lie, Mr. Rosenberg. But you don't care, because it's the effect of the lie that you want, not necessarily whether it's true or not. You're not interested in that. The story goes on, this Guardian story, who never came to me for a comment, by the way. They never do. I had one request this week, and all this fury going on. I had one request this week from the Los Angeles Times for a comment on the situation and what was in the papers, right? None of the others come to you. Oh, I'm a journalist. Oh, if only, brackets, number 3. It says, this isn't the first time Walker has expressed her affinity for Icke's work or been accused herself of anti-Semitism. Ooh. In 2013, Walker praised another Icke book in an interview for the British radio show Desert Island Discs. And we have a tweet from a bloke called Danny Gold. Apparently, this isn't the first time Alice Walker has publicly exposed her unhinged anti-Semitism. Just go here to a biography of Alice Walker. Now, what does it say here? Oh yeah, personal life. In 1965, Walker met Melvin Rosenman Leventhal, a Jewish civil rights lawyer. They were married on March 17th, 1967 in New York City. Later that year, the couple relocated to Jackson, Mississippi, becoming the first legally married interracial couple in Mississippi. They were harassed and threatened by whites, including the Ku Klux Klan, and the couple had a daughter, Rebecca, in 1969. Now, breathe, Dave, breathe. Because I am so sick and tired, as increasing numbers of the public are, of having thoroughly decent people who don't have a racist cell in their body being accused of anti-Semitism by these morons and such like from the ultra-Zionist protection racket and its unquestioning mob. Here is a lady so not anti-Semitic. She married a Jewish man and went through all of that. Both of them did. To stand for what they believed in. Harassed by the Ku Klux Klan. First legally married interracial couple in Mississippi. And yet now, these disgusting people, I can't find another word as I sit here, can say or indicate that she's somehow anti-Semitic. There's another one here, I won't repeat it, another tweet from someone called Rebecca Pierce. Usual stuff. And she has herself been called anti-Semitic for questioning some of the things that Zionism does. Because you're not allowed to, you see. The whole foundation of the anti-Semitic protection racket is that no Jewish person can, in any shape or form, ever do anything that is not absolutely perfect, moral, and uncriticizable. Thus, if you do, because what you say can't possibly be true, you must be an anti-Semite. That's where we have reached now. And when you're starting to indicate that someone like Alice Walker is racist, brought up in segregated Georgia, and created an amazing career for herself, despite that serious situation of challenge that she was born into, then you know that something's not right. That it's not about exposing racism, it's about protecting criticism of Israel. And I tell you what, I'm not having it. And people can throw all the nonsensical abuse at me that they like. I don't care if it's the media, I don't care if it's a Twitter storm, I don't care who it is. Because I know where I'm coming from. And thus that's all that matters. What other people say about you is irrelevant. What you know about yourself is what matters. And I'm taking this as a basically as a compliment, because this nonsense wouldn't have exploded unless I was saying something that the establishment doesn't want people to hear. So the more they attack me, the more it drives me on. And I would just say to people, just look at it. You are making these suggestions about the views of Alice Walker, one of the most non-racial people you'd ever meet in your life. Because these people are telling you that you should. Wouldn't it be a good idea if you checked it out? Wouldn't it be a good idea if you changed the habits of a lifetime and started thinking for yourself? Because if you did, you would see that you're being had. And none more so than the so-called progressive left that has become, in so many ways, a mob, an enforcing mob for the very establishment they claim to oppose. Alice Walker's one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met and observed in my life. And I'm proud to call her a friend. And I'm sad that she's had this stuff this week. But Alice Walker is someone who is absolutely committed to speaking her truth. So it won't change a thing. Incredible. Incredible. And here's another one. This is from this week. This is how far this protection racket has gone. There was a speech therapist in America. They call them speech pathologists, I think they call them now. She refused to sign a contract for the renewal of her job contract that insisted, although she's worked for this school district for many, many, many years, going back I think to 2009, and every year the contract is renewed. But this time, the contract that she had to agree included she had to commit to basically not doing anything that harmed Israel and not anything that criticized Israel. This was in bloody Texas, which is owned by Israel, if you look at it. So we've now reached the point where you have to say you won't do anything to harm Israel. By harm, they mean supporting anything that Israel doesn't want, before you can renew your contract as a speech therapist in a frickin' school. This is not just the creeping, my goodness me, it's on steroids now. This expansion of the imposing of the will of a country of 8 million people. You know, Jewish people in the world are 0.2%. Okay, breath. Again, 0.2% of the global population. 2% of America. And the vast majority of them are not ultra-Zionists, and they're not involved in the conspiracy that I expose. So look at what the 0 point must be if you're looking only at those that are involved in this conspiracy. Look at what the 2% must really be if you're looking only at those involved in this conspiracy. And yet the will of that minority of minority of minority is being imposed ever more on the global population. That tells you something. It doesn't tell the media anything. Doesn't tell the progressive mob anything. But it tells intelligent people something. That something's not right. because that makes no sense unless. And I, for one, I'm not going to let it go quietly. Not now, not frickin' ever.